Hello and welcome to episode 51 of When the Flames Go Up, the ATFC podcast. Slightly different episode this week as we had no game to specifically talk about. But yeah, turns out loads of talking points when you support Aldershot. So it's a wide-ranging discussion. The AFC Fylde postponement, drainage, free up, free down, Sittingbourne away, ticket allocations. And then we started talking about Eastleigh and Southend just at the end. Just a little throwaway comment about two very big away games coming up for the Shots in the context of the season. So yeah, without further ado, enjoy the episode and up the Shots. So the Shots at the weekend were preparing to play against AFC Fylde on Saturday at 3 o'clock, but that game was postponed. So this is probably the first time we've actually got together without watching a game or seeing any highlights beforehand, which is quite weird. I've just jumped on a call to talk about all the situations around it and various other things. We've got plenty to talk about tonight, and I guess we're gonna have to talk about the Fylde postponement and the circumstances surrounding that. I guess yeah, the main point is there was a pitch inspection called at in the morning for 12:30. After the referee said the pitch was currently unplayable. A load of sand was put down in the problem areas, which are kind of near to the north stand. There's a big kind of yellow band of sand that you can see in the picture, and then it was called off after that pitch inspection. Eventually, the pitch inspection was at 12:30, and I think confirmation came through maybe even 40 minutes after that. So I was already in London, already in Aldershot from London, watching Orient City, um, and yeah, in the George, along with other disgruntled fans, including some Gillingham fans who were friends of Hugo, and were going to be in the director's box. They'd come down because they had Barrow away that day, and yeah, they were not best pleased when the eventual result came in. But yes, I'm going to come to you first, Joe, because you didn't come from Gillingham nor from London. Where did you come from, and what were your thoughts on the day that you had?
Thanks, Will. Yeah, so if people listeners don't already know, I live sort of near Exeter, in the middle of Devon. So left where I live about just before 8:30. Made good time, lovely drive up. Expecting a normal day. Got pulled into Aldershot about just after 12. Me and my father go and see a friend. Just check the club Twitter feed as I normally do, just because I'm an Aldershot addict, and saw the planned pitch inspection news, and so I turned to my dad and went, "You're not going to believe this." He was like, "What?" I didn't tell him that Geordie was starting. It wasn't that. It was yeah, pitch inspection, and yeah, we were just yeah, it can't be. And then when they said they're trying to get the game on, we're like, this is great, this is great. But when they say that, we really know that's just not going to happen, is it? And got the news that the game was cancelled. So yeah, it wasn't a totally wasted journey because it was nice to catch up with a friend, and we did end up going to see Fleet Town against Hawley, which ended 2-1 to Fleet. There was two red cards, a mass brawl, everything you want from a bit of step four non-league action. So did get a good entertaining game out of it, and to be honest, I didn't come home upset about the result, so which I normally do. So that was great. But I was, to be honest, the whole thing was a farce. Whilst I did get a game out of it, the whole shot situation was a total farce. We have to be honest, I think. There was no communication from the club until gone 12 o'clock to say this. There are plenty of fans who come from around, home fans who travel to watch the games, and obviously the away fans as well. Apparently, the club had been in communication with Fylde from Friday night. Brilliant. That's great. Not a single piece of communication with, from a Shots perspective, to their home fans to let us know we're very unlikely to travel. It's an expensive day out. Left feeling very, very frustrated. And it felt I'll be honest, I don't like to slag the club off too much, but it was very, very frustrating. It's an expensive day out. It felt like a bit of a slap in the face to know that they'd actually been communication. I think I would have been less annoyed if there was no communication with anyone because it just felt more frustrating to know that. Yeah, so whilst I did find some humour in the situation and found another game to go to, from a club, looking at the club perspective, very, very frustrating. And also, supposedly the drainage had been looked at a few weeks ago. Our pitch is turning into a total farce, and I don't want us to end up with a Halifax situation like last season where we end up. Well, we won't play our games at Accrington Stanley, but we'd probably play them, somewhere else if that has to happen, and that would be really, really would be tragic with a fixture pile up as well. Sorry for the rant.
No, no, I think many more rants have been had on Facebook and on Shotsweb about this. So yeah, you mentioned the kind of the drainage issue, which was that was on the 3rd of February. We got a kind of a news update saying that the drainage has been sorted by Natta. Um, so that was good. I assumed then that the little rain that we've had would have been soaked up perfectly by the pitch. So then it seems like they've refound that problem of the drainage on Friday or somewhere in between because there was no rain until Friday, I don't think, in Aldershot. And then the the actual announcement from the shots, um, explained about heavy snow overnight, um, which I think has been broadly corroborated by people that live very near to the ground. There was a bit of heavy snow, but obviously it mainly just went to sleet immediately. But yeah, I think if we're calling off games after that little rain and 7 days rest of a pitch, then there is something deeper going on. And whether we can sort that out mid-season, I don't know. I guess the other thing that's caused ire was there was a post that went out on Twitter reminding people to get their tickets ahead of the game. That was a couple of hours before the pitch inspection announcement. I assume that was a scheduled post that they just put out, make sure it's out at 10 or whatever. But you would think someone would say in the comms department, or not department, the comms man, we've had a discussion with Fylde about the pitch. We might not be going ahead. Maybe don't put that post out selling tickets, knowing that maybe there's a pitch inspection. So that's another thing. I'm going to come to you, Guy. What were your thoughts on the situation where you were?
Well, yeah, as you know, I'm amongst us all. I'm the exile shot who's living on the continent, so it doesn't really affect me in terms of getting to the game because all I was going to do was just watch it on DAZN. My 5-year-old was a little bit disappointed that we weren't going to put on our replica shirts and cheer on the team in red. I mean, that's about all he kind of registers when it comes to Aldershot at this stage. Doesn't really understand the concept of a goal yet. So there was, that didn't happen. In the end, we ended up doing some gardening. So some physical exercise, I suppose, of a kind. It was disappointing. I mean, I do look forward to my Saturdays. It has become a bit of a ritual for us to plonk ourselves down and watch the game. But so obviously I can only talk about it from a distance. But you've touched upon it a little bit, Joe, talking about the what you and Will about sort of the quality of the pitch at the moment. It does look bad. I mean, we saw that a few weeks ago when they were playing at home. And really, we're coming to a point in the season now where we really don't have very many days left if postponements start to pile up and we face risks of having to sort of reschedule matches. There's not going to be a lot of space left in the calendar. And that's also going to mean we're moving to regular two games a week, which is going to put a lot of pressure on the players. Risks of injuries as well, particularly on a pitch that's not as good as it could be. So that's probably the sort of the main concern. And keep in mind, of course, that we're still in several cup competitions as well. So there is. I mean, whereas we don't have to worry too much about replays. Should those games go to a draw or extra time, they will be dealt with on the day. But the point is that those cup games, will pile up with the league games, and we've got to. And the end of the season's the 5th of May, isn't it? So we have to. All games have to be done by that. And I think we've only got about sort of about 5 slots midweek that aren't already taken up with the game. So right now we're okay. The worry is, of course, that if we start to have more postponements, then it's all going to pile up. It's going to become a bit of a problem. Now, I did notice actually that in the Shots discussion forum that the Army's also been or the Army FA has been using the pitch for a while, but they seem to have decided to pull out of their games for the rest of the season. So that could help us. And I think really, it's to the betterment of the team there. But that's really what I'm taking from this discussion.
Yes, yeah, that's another thing. Yeah, the Army FA obviously have pulled out of those scheduled games. We've had Reading, I think under 21s that were playing it in November and December last year, in between our National League Cup games in the week as well. So there's been plenty of fixtures being played on it. You would think we would be able to hold on. The pitch would be able to hold on. I don't think we've had any absolutely insane weather. Downpours or anything. I think this the pitch is the issue at the moment. Obviously, the Solihull game was an interesting one, I suppose, because there's that problem patch in front of the South Stand that doesn't get any sun until about 2 o'clock in the afternoon or 1 o'clock in the afternoon. So that frozen bit is slightly different to the pitch problem, but yeah, a very very strange situation to be in. I'll come to you, Julian. What were your thoughts on I guess we're going to call it the Fylde farce at this point?
Yeah, it is disappointing, isn't it? You can't really put any other spin on it than that. The disappointment for me is that we took a lot of stick with regard to the Solihull game, didn't we? And that being postponed. And you would hope that we've learned some lessons from that. But if anything, this one felt even worse actually than the Solihull postponement. Simply as Joe pointed out earlier, there was no idea at all that the game was even in doubt. So yeah, that's really disappointing, and we really do have to think about the potential situation with how many supporters are coming. I'm similar to Joe. I travel a long way. I stick in a hell of a lot of petrol to get to and from each home game, and the supporters from Aldershot plus the other supporters as well. There are quite a few supporters that are not within sort of 10 miles or so, and the other interesting thing for me is that the Hartlepool game is coming up in a couple of weeks, and that is turning into a really big thing for the Aldershot stray shots movement, if you like, within Facebook, and there's a huge amount of interest in that game. There's going to be some radio coverage. There's people coming from all over the world to this game, and people staying over. We cannot make the same mistakes as we have done here before. So, they're really, really disappointed from that respect. But we have got we've got an opportunity now to learn from these mistakes, I think. And I think as Joe pointed out, if we had known something on Friday, then that could have potentially avoided some potential problems. And especially for the ones that do travel a long way, it is something that we do need to get right moving forward. I did see something on Shots where there was a comment with regard to sort of like a historical problem with, I don't profess to be an expert by any means on this, but it looks as if there was a problem with regard to this area of the pitch quite a few years ago when Chelsea were involved with us. And there was talk on Shotsweb there about potentially looking at trying to fix this problem, and it was going to cost something like 50,000, I think. And it looked like it was a case of sort of kicking the can down the road, and unfortunately, it's now come to bite us now. And I really don't want to get into that situation where we're a Wealdstone or a Halifax, and as Joe said, playing our games at Accrington Stanley, which obviously won't be the case. But we don't want to get to that stage. Interesting that Guy mentioned about the season finishing on the 5th of May. In some respects, that's really good, because you remember last season it finished on the 20th of April. So they have actually extended the league by 2 weeks, I think, to solve these potential problems that may come to pass. But and of course we didn't have all these cup competitions from last season that we're now involved in. So yeah, I think it's going to be a huge challenge to get these matches on now, and I'm just praying that the weather's kind to us and it allows us to get these games on.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you mentioned Wildstone in there as well. We've still got to go there on a Tuesday night. So that's another one that may well be postponed, considering the pitch the two times that I've been there. Well, I mean, one time was in the end of the season, but I think it was last season. Yeah, last season. One side of the pitch, the ball wasn't bouncing because it was
It was
so
very bizarre.
very
Really, really. I
strange.
remember that game. Yeah, that was very, very strange to watch.
Yeah. So I imagine, I mean, that's a kind of a historical issue as well. Like, I mean, I think I did read that same thing as you did, Julian, about the pitch. But there's like a slight dip apparently, and that's just, obviously naturally that's where the water ends up residing. But yeah, and you mentioned the communication around the Solihull game versus this one. It's basically the exact opposite. So the Solihull communication was very, it was constant communication saying, "Oh, we think it's on. We're pretty sure, we're pretty confident." So at least you were getting an update, pretty regularly. And obviously, the fact that it was postponed really late was the main sticking point for that, and why we didn't figure out that there was a big frozen patch on one side of the pitch. And then the filed communication was absolutely zero. I had no reason to believe on Saturday morning when I was making my way from London that the pitch was in any state, any poor state. I mean, I would always assume. I mean, 7 days in between a game is absolutely fine. It doesn't really matter how bad it's been or how much. I mean, the rain on Friday, sure. I mean, maybe that's partly to blame. But yeah, this pitch thing could rumble on as well. I don't think we've had the worst of the weather for this winter either. So, yeah, let's hope that there's no further storms or downpours that cause us to have to move matches, or like we're saying, move matches to different venues, which is not out of the realms of possibilities at this point. Although I guess I don't know where we'd go, to be honest. That's the only thing I saw someone mentioning Reading. Reading, Farnborough, but I think they've got to be up to like National League standard and stuff. So
I mean, the Fleet game was great because it was a classic uphill, downhill, first half, second half. So that for entertainment value, we could go there.
yeah, it'd be good. Yeah, I don't know what I mean. I imagine what's Fleet Town's attendance, not attendance, capacity saying.
I think it was about 300 or 400, but I think they could get about 1,500 in there at a push.
Okay, nice. So
Just
it's
about all we
basically
take at the moment.
it's yeah, and it's about the same as Sittingbourne away in the FA Trophy. That's been the other talking point in this matchless week. So the Sittingbourne away game, which is on 1st of March, in the quarterfinal. That's now they've made a decision. It's now going to be a 12:30 kickoff. I didn't see any reasons for this outwardly, but I assume it's for kind of safety reasons or police, or it could be for TV. But I haven't seen it. You'd think they'd announce that quite soon, if we could potentially watch it. Although I don't think any game in the FA Trophy has been shown on any sort of package. So yeah, the shots are going to be given 195 tickets, and it's going to go to a ballot, which is quite exciting, but also, a kind of feeling of, oh God, probably not going to be able to go. And you get a ticket each if you get through, and some of it has been given to the Shots Away travel group, who are kind of the only verifiable get people that go to every game, basically. So those have been the talking points this week. Joe, what are your thoughts on the ticket and the time and I guess your thoughts on Sittingbourne away anyway?
I think the ticketing situation, there was never going to be a way to do it that pleased everyone. And I think as there is no real record of who follows, home and away all the time, that's probably about the fairest system they could have come up with. I think, you're going to be very lucky if you get a ticket. And if you do, there'll be one to remember and be one to say, if we win the game, I was there, or if we lose the game, one to try and forget. I think it's a fixture that for the town of Sittingbourne. I've actually been to Sittingbourne, not to the stadium, but one of my good housemates from uni grew up watching Sittingbourne. And I messaged him the other day because he doesn't really follow their results anymore. And I said, "You're never going to believe this. We're actually playing you guys." And he was like, "You're joking." And he was like, "In what competition?" And I was like, "The FA Trophy." And yeah, I think this is really lovely. It's massive for them as a town to have this game. And I think those tickets will sell out. It's going to be very, very hard to get one. And I think I've had a look at pictures of their ground. I think even if you do go, it's going to be, unless you're at the very front, very hard to even see anything. So it's just, I think it's a shame really that we can't get the TV coverage for FA Trophy. What hasn't been done previously. So I'm not really sure on the reasons for that. I understand it with the FA Cup. If you're not televised, unless you are, you won't be able to see it. But I would have thought with a competition like the FA Trophy, I imagine it's a separate organisation to National League TV or DAZN. But I don't see why we can't come to some agreement there to show a game like this. Because if we're allowed 200 tickets, I'm sure there'd be 2,000-3,000 Shots fans who would willingly, buy a stream. But yeah, that sort of logistics is beyond my comprehension. But yeah, I think it's a game to look forward to. And yeah, if you get a ticket, good luck to you. Excellent.
Yes, yeah, I'll be crossing my fingers, hoping for that. It's actually really easy for me to get from Lewisham, which is quite annoying. It's only an hour away for me. So yeah, I mean, kind of slightly related to the FA Trophy and Cup wins in general. We had an email from Sean entitled "Cup Wins versus League Wins." So he says, "Hi gents, I've noticed that in recent weeks we did fairly well in the various cups. I did forget to mention we beat Tadley Caliver. Was it 6-1? Ash isn't here to tell us all about it, as he was there. I've been noticing we're doing fairly well in the various cups that we're involved in, and of course this is a positive thing. However, I'm finding it hard to be overly enthusiastic about these wins due to our current standing in the league. I'm curious to know your opinions on how we can start picking up results in the league, and what do we have to do differently?" It's an interesting question, isn't it? I'm going to come to you, Guy. He also adds, I also seen that we've picked a few players up on loan, such as Brad Dollahan. There we go, more news for you. And then how does Aldershot go about securing quality players to keep us up from the drop? I mean, we'd all have to know that, I think. I'm not asking you specifically, Guy, how we do that. But yeah, your general opinions on the cup wins versus the league wins.
If someone has the answer to that, then they should talk to the chairman, because I think he's desperate to know how to do that. But yeah, I mean, look, I understand where he's coming from with this sort of cup, trying to get enthusiastic about the cups versus the league. For me, it's always been the case that as long as the league position is secured, then I can kind of enjoy the cups. Certainly, I mean, while we're in 3 of them, I have to say that the one that's exciting me the most is the FA Trophy. Simply because, if we do go all the way, then we're talking about a Wembley date, which I think all of us would love to do. And I do actually want to ask you guys what the situation is with regards to actually getting a ticket for that. Maybe I shouldn't be thinking so far ahead, but if you recall, there's always been sort of this sense that in order to get some tickets, you have to be able to have gone to other previous matches in that competition. So if we're talking about 165 or so for Sittingbourne, but if we're getting sort of further along, whether we're going to be able to take a larger crowd. But yeah, the other 2 cup competitions. I mean, the Hampshire Cup has always been, it's always been since the refounding of the club, we've taken it quite seriously. We've really enjoyed being in it. We've won it a few times. And it's pretty much stayed with us even as we've sort of gone up the league. Although admittedly, I think even maybe about 10 years or so ago, it used to be the case that we usually put out reserve sides rather than the first team that we've been doing this season. And I understand, we've talked about it, why Tommy's putting out first team players into the cup competitions like Hampshire Cup and like this new National League Cup. It's to try and sort of boost the morale, experiment a little bit, because we've been struggling a bit in the league. And also, if you're doing well in the cup, that hopefully that kind of morale and the enthusiasm sort of spills over into the league. And I think we did do that. I think after the last Hampshire Cup win, we sort of followed that up with a win against Boreham Wood in the league. So there is that sense. But really, I do understand that feeling of sort of the nervousness that comes with being so low down and or looking behind us to see if which teams behind us but lower down are going to catch up and get a few points ahead of us. So there is that sense of the cup competition would be a little bit more enjoyable if we were a little bit safer. And of course, we've talked a little. I've touched upon this a bit when it comes to the pitch, and the postponements. We are now coming to that point in the season where, as you say, Will, the weather could get worse, and if we start to see sort of fixtures piling up, we also run the risk of injuries. So, and if we only had the league to worry about, this wouldn't be a problem. But of course, we're firing on 4 fronts at the moment, and so my worry is that something might give. And of all the things that I want, I'd be prepared to see go, it would actually be the cups rather than the league. For me, it's about staying in the National League. Dropping down to the regional levels, I'm not. We've been there. I don't want us to go back.
Yes, yeah. It's definitely unthinkable to. I don't think it'd ever come to a point where we'd want those over staying in this league. As much as I'd love to not be in this league for just one season or so. But yeah, at what cost? And Julian, I'll come to you. What you're feeling about kind of the cup wins versus the league wins this season?
Yeah, for me, I really appreciate Sean's question. Actually, I think it's a really good question, and I think Tommy has used the cup competitions to his advantage in the sense that because we're not doing so well, he's taken that opportunity to use the cups to instill a bit of confidence, to, as Guy said, to get some of those first team players to play and to win games. Sean made an interesting comment about he's not enjoying the cup competition much as he would if we were higher up in the league, and I think that is generally the case. You always think of the cup competitions as a welcome distraction, don't you, from the league games? But for me, I think the further we go in them, particularly the trophy, obviously the more exciting it gets, and I'm still a little bit intrigued about this National League competition as well. Bearing in mind we're in the final 8, and there's some really useful Premier League under-21 teams left in it too. So I am getting a bit more interested in that one as we go through. But I think in general the cup competitions have been of benefit because we've been talking about this unbeaten run since the middle of December now, and of course that partly has been as a result of the cup games as well. So I think Tommy has found them really useful, and I think they actually played a part in us probably staying out the bottom 4, because you could argue that without the momentum from the league cup games, that we could well be in the bottom 4 by now. So I think overall they've been a good thing for us, but obviously concerned about the fixture pile up potentially.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, we'll wait and see what news comes of the National League Cup. They seem to be keeping their cards very close to their chest. I don't think anyone is fully 100% confident on what happens next and who and where it's going to be played. Can we play a United under-21s game? I'm not really sure. Maybe I haven't been digging into it too much because the general vibe of the cup from the start hasn't been great. But thank you, Sean, for your email. I think I'm in a similar boat. Basically, it's quite hard. I definitely haven't really batted an eyelid at the Hampshire Cup or the National League Cup. And my eyes are always firmly focused on the FA Trophy. But it will mean very little if we make it further in this competition and are still kind of dangling on the edge of the relegation zone. Sean ends his email asking us what we think of the Put Football First campaign, which is also known as the Free Up campaign. Pretty simple. It's asking for free promotion places from the National League, which would create free relegation places in the League too. And that's been a request to the EFL, basically. So, Julian, what were your thoughts on the Put Football First campaign?
It's a really interesting one for me because all of the National League teams are going to obviously support it. And my guess would be very few of the EFL teams would support it. It's a bit like, what's that saying? Turkeys voting for Christmas. The facts and figures are interesting though, because for me, it does open up the opportunity to get back into the league. All of these teams that have come down from the EFL, they'll all tell you they've really struggled with getting again, and so yeah, that's a compelling argument to give them that actually, if they did go for 3 up, 3 down, then they'd have a better opportunity of actually getting back into the league. I was looking at some facts and figures. Something like since the playoffs were introduced in '87. I think it is something like 53 teams have been promoted into the EFL, and every single one of them has stayed in the EFL in their first season. So no one's ever gone straight back down again. So that in itself tells you the strength of the National League. And there's been a few teams that have gone up and down a couple of times, but every single team that's gone up, been promoted from the National League, has survived. So that does show the strength of the league. I think the Shrewsbury manager Gareth Ainsworth was saying that there's not a hope in hell that this is going to go through, and unfortunately, I think that's really short-sighted, because there's huge benefits for it, and the EFL have got to play on the ones that have come up. So those guys that have got promoted and have stayed up, Bromley, for example, will be voting for it because they can see the huge benefits of it. So definitely in support of it, but I don't think the EFL will be.
No, yeah, that is the exact thing, isn't it? Turkey's voting for Christmas. Well, there's a kind of the famous quote, I suppose, in support of it is Ryan Reynolds himself, like kind of lambasting why on earth it's this hard to get out of the league, why there are only 2 spaces. I think that was in the season that obviously Notts County got was it 106 points or something, and didn't get promoted through the playoffs. Which is obviously, situations like that are very, quite few and far between. But it seems like becoming more and more prevalent. I guess the main thing I've seen on the other side of it, I think we're all generally in agreement. We want free promotion places. I think the teams are good enough to go up, most of them. I mean, and it means that teams coming down aren't faced with this oblivion, which is, it's always said, dropping out of the Football League. It doesn't have to be like that. It can be a stepping, a step back to then come back stronger into the Football League. The main thing that I think that's been brought up is there's not like a owners and directors test to be a National League chairman or whatever. It's described as a bit of a Wild West where you can kind of do things a little less with a few less rules in place. So the National League would basically have to completely sharpen up, or be told you've got to start doing a owners and directors test every time there's a new owner, every time, and especially starting it. I mean, if we said for free promotion bases for next season, which is what the campaign is asking for, then you presume that every owner in this league would need to go through some sort of test to be verified and said that yes, they do have this money, they have enough to keep them going for the next 5 years. All the kind of sustainability practices that the EFL has to keep its clubs, safe and sustainable, would need to be caught up with in the National League, which is probably it's going to be its downfall, I presume. But yes, but yeah, I'm fully in support of it as a general principle. I think that's going to be the same for every National League club, considering how hard we found it. Well, to be honest, how hard we found it getting into the top half of this league, let alone into the top 2 automatic places and a playoff place. Guy, what are your thoughts on the Put Football First campaign?
Well, I mean, like you, and I think, it's across the National League, you're going to be hard pressed to find any club or fan that doesn't agree with the 3 up, 3 down idea. That said, it's more than just what you were saying about sort of, the directors test with the National League directors. It's also, ultimately, it comes down to money as well. And the thing is that the clubs that unfortunately, there is a bit of a cliff face for clubs when they get relegated. And we're not just talking about from the Premier League to the Championship or even Championship to League One. It also happens from League Two into the National League, because there is that money which the Premier League disperses to as solidarity payments to the Football League, which they circulate around. And I believe it's around, for a club getting relegated out of the EFL into the National League, they get about £1 million over 2 years. So 500,000. That's not to be sniffed at. And so you're losing that money, plus also the solidarity payments, which are around £1 million or so a year, maybe slightly more. Obviously, that doesn't exist in the National League. So so there's both the payments that you get from the Premier League, as being a League Two side, but also the sort of the parachute payments that last for 2 years and then it's gone. So that's a real concern for EFL clubs coming down. There is also something else as well, which is the fact that EFL clubs are required now to limit the amount that they spend on wages for players to around 50% of their turnover. We don't have that in the National League. And so this is why you've seen, excessive spending. You mentioned Julian mentioned Wild West, but it's also, you've seen excessive spending by clubs trying to get out of the league, most notably Wrexham in the last few years. Now, luckily for them, they had backing, they've managed to get themselves up into League One. But you can well imagine that, one or two clubs thinking short term here, overspend, to try and get into League Two, fail, and then the club collapses. So, yes, I know there's also talk about the football regulator coming in. That's being discussed in Parliament at the moment. So that hopefully should overshadow some of this stuff. But also, I think if you want to try and persuade the EFL about the merits of this campaign, we're probably going to also have to do something ourselves. So maybe we do need to revisit our own finances or our financial approach to things, so that maybe we bring ourselves more into line with the EFL and limit ourselves to 50% wage spending. So that could be an option to show that we're willing. But it's so different when you think about how we first came about to get promotion between non-league and into League Two, Division 4 back then in 1987. At the time, it was basically the Football League saying, get your house in order, structure and organize non-league into a pyramid, and then we'll do that, which is how Scarborough came up in the first year of 87. I guess sort of extending it to a second promotion spot back in 2003, 2004 was possible because the finances or the financial cost of moving from League Two into National League wasn't as extreme as it is now, 20 years on. So this is something we're going to need to. We're all for the campaign, but I think you can't just sort of rely on principle or moral, moral judgments and values here. I think you're going to have to be a little bit hard nosed if you actually want the EFL to sign up to it. And I think I've read somewhere as well that said that there might also be a reason why the EFL may be holding out at the moment, which is that currently, because of the regulator business that's going on in Parliament, Premier League, they're still waiting to hear from the Premier League as to what kind of solidarity payments they're going to be offered this time round. So they want to know what they're about to lose before they start voting for being turkeys that vote for Christmas.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I did see that as well. That's kind of their first retort kind of to the campaign was to say, yeah, let's wait for the football regulator, let's wait for the Premier League and their deal and those kind of things, which obviously, yeah, kind of puts a spanner in the whole works from the very beginning. But yeah, let's see where this goes. I'm wondering, yeah, what happens next and what kind of, it's almost certainly not going to happen next season, but it's as long as it's something that we can keep revisiting each season and, like you say, like bring in those more stringent rules around wages and stuff. Because I think was it Wrexham that lost 5 million trying to get out of the league, or 5 million a year or something. Something crazy. We saw York, how much they spent last season and nearly got relegated to regional football. Like it's it's quite mad how much you can gamble in this league just to try and get into the top. Well, you've got to be top. And that's it. And we'll have a pretty decent title race this season, where 3 of the 4 teams probably aren't going to get promoted, despite probably having about they'll be within 5 points of each other or so, and probably in the high 80s as we track towards the end of the season. Grand. Okay. Well, we'll keep an eye on all things free up, free down. I suppose after all this time, we better start talking about what's coming up next for Aldershot. Aldershot are now 19th and 2 points off the drop, 4 points off 22nd. Wealdstone Maidenhead beat Southend at the weekend. Fylde won 1-0 in the week away at Halifax to win their second away game of the season before coming down to us and obviously getting the postponement. So they are just 2 points behind us now. Yes, so the shots go to Eastleigh away on Saturday and then Southend away on the following Tuesday. So with Eastleigh up first. They're both very mid-table, both very very average seasons. Eastleigh have drawn 11 games, which is the joint second. We are of course way out ahead with 12. Yes, McCallum is still the top goal scorer, but he's not scored as many as you would expect. He's only scored 8 so far this season, after scoring 31 last season, which is still crazy. So it's quite the drop off, but it's still their top goal scorer. They did bolster with bringing Uchig Boulam from Oldham, who I think me and Julian love and don't understand why he wasn't getting much time at Oldham. So I'm sure he'll terrorise our defence. And in general, very experienced team that we managed to beat in October, turning around the one goal deficit to win 2-1 in the second half. Jack Barham and Ryan Jones. But we basically stopped Quigley, your Maguires and McCallum from doing anything in that home game. So that's Eastleigh. And then I'll move on to Southend, and then we can discuss them as a whole, I guess. Southend's top goal scorer is still Gus Scott Morris. Gus Scott Morris, quite a hard thing to say actually. I'll just call him GSM. He's scored 11 so far, but he's only scored twice since September because he had that mad start to the season where he was already on like 9 by, well, it must have been by early September. Macaulay Bonne is back down at this level. He scored his first goal for the club last week, midweek away at Dagred. He also was the reason they lost to Sittingbourne at the very end because he tried to nutmeg a player, and then it flew in the bottom corner for Sittingbourne to win in that FA Trophy tie in the 5th round. They've tended to actually beat the teams around us, which is helpful. They beat Dagred 2-0, beat Fylde 2-0, and then went to Maidenhead and lost 1-0. So we can kind of thank them a little bit for taking some points off of our relegation rivals. But Maidenhead's, Maidenhead getting that result made the table look a little more perilous. That's about it. Other than to mention the 0-0 that we had against Southend, which was absolutely awful. Southend basically on top for 90 minutes, and we barely managed a shot. So here's hoping for something better next Tuesday. I'll come to you first, Julian. How are you feeling about these next 2 away games?
Well, you know me. I'm always confident. I always think we're going to end up winning the game, and we never do. But I'm really not sure which Shots team are going to turn up for both games. There's every chance that we could take 6 points out of these 2 games, and there's also every chance that we could take no points as well. So it's a difficult one to call. Typically, if you look at our form this season, we've played better against the better teams, and although they're both mid-table, I would class them both as good teams to play against. So, let's take the positives. We're getting on for 2 months now unbeaten, and if we were playing a team that was 2 months unbeaten, we would be thinking that's going to be a real tough game, and we're going to struggle to beat them. So, I think that confidence is there. I mentioned it last week about the sort of blossoming partnership with the two young boys at the back, and every time they play, they get better and better, and they're both really good at reading the game and very quick learners too. So, I'm confident. I think we can go to Eastleigh. Mentioned in your notes that there's some recognisable names there. They have an experienced team, but one thing they've always been to me is a little bit slow, if you like. So yeah, they've obviously brought in our friend, I can't remember how you pronounce it now, Uçak is it? He's our friend from Oldham, and he's as quick as anything. So they have sort of taken that and added a bit of pace. But generally speaking, they're quite a big, slow team. So I'm really looking forward to this one. I think our new boy from West Ham will get some minutes, and I think we will come out of that with at least a point and maybe even 3 points. And then moving on to Southend, again, as I said, I'm really not sure, firstly, which Aldershot side is going to turn up, but also which Southend side is going to turn up too, because they've had some horrendous results and they've had some really good results. So it literally could go either way. The thing for me is, odd 11, do we know what team is going to be picked on Saturday? And I'm not sure we do. So I guess it's down to the team selection and who Tommy thinks is going to be able to sort of stand up to the big, powerful Eastleigh team. And actually, just thinking about it off the top of my head, I'm wondering whether this is the game for Mr. Makoma to come back in. He was obviously ex-Eastleigh, and he is a typical Eastleigh player, isn't he? So I'm just wondering whether perhaps he's going to slot back into the back three. I don't know. I'm just thinking out loud whether that's going to happen or not. So some really interesting choices for our 11 who turn up on Saturday and the following Tuesday against Southend.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, and we've got kind of Jenkins as well. Presumably, basically back to full-ish match practice, other than not being able to get too many minutes in since his return. So yeah, it'd be interesting to see if he just slots in. Where does he slot in? Are we just going to oust one of the lone players because they're not I wouldn't move any of them at the moment at the back. Keep playing the way they are as it stands. Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, Southend Southend and Eastleigh had a very similar season so far, to be honest. But Southend have won 10, drawn 10, lost 10, which is very lovely symmetry. With +2 goal difference and 40 points. So it's all even numbers. And Eastleigh, are on 38 and they'd move on to 41 with that win, and then you're only 5 points off the playoffs. But I think that's most teams in this league. You're kind of 2 wins away from thinking about the playoffs. And of course, we remember beating Oldham and thinking, you know what? I mean, if we just, so yeah, there'll be less of that now. It's more fighting for our lives again. Guy, what are your thoughts ahead of the Saturday and Tuesday away games?
Well, I was thinking that I'm glad I'm sitting between you and Julian, Will, because the last time I listened to you in the wake of that Oldham game, you guys were going stratospheric, talking about playoffs, and I'm glad to hear that Julian's kind of come down to earth a little bit, even with the degree of optimism that he's presented. And look, yes, they're both mid-table sides, but if you look at the form for the last few games, at least in the league, Eastleigh's lost all 3. And Southend's won 2, lost 1. Eastleigh, I actually sort of did a little, rather than talk about Aldershot and sort of how they might line up on this weekend and early next week. I actually took the time out to look at to watch to Eastleigh's and Southend's most recent games, and Eastleigh were playing away at Forest Green Rovers, who we ourselves did, if you recall, a couple of weeks ago, and we took the game to them. Actually, Eastleigh did pretty well. I mean, they went in at half time. They were a little bit. They had a couple of very good chances, missed a penalty, and then gifted Forest Green Rovers the lead with a very sort of weak attempt to catch a cross by the goalkeeper, which went through his hands and into the net. And in fact, even though they sort of pulled back, it was looking like it was going to be a draw until the last minute, when Forest Green Rovers managed to pull out a winner in the last minute of the game. So I think in some respects, Eastleigh were a little bit hard done by there. They seemed to play pretty well. They took the game to Forest Green Rovers, and as you know, they're sort of higher up the league. So I don't think they're pushovers. I think they're certainly a team we're going to need to watch out for. And I'd also say the same thing about Southend as well. In their game at the weekend, I mean, yes, they lost, but actually they were in it for much of the time. And in the post-match interview, interview, their manager Kevin Mayer was talking about how they were just frustrated because they show a lot of quality on the ball and they have a lot of possession. They pass the ball round, they kept it away from the opposition. It was just in the final third where the quality was lacking, where they just weren't getting the chances, or just not making them, or not taking them. And my goodness, listening to him talk was like listening to Tommy talk about Aldershot. When you think about in that respect, I think we're quite evenly matched, I think, for both of these games. And so I can see us going and any combination of results coming out. It would be fantastic if we get a win, but even if we extend the unbeaten run, I'm happy with that as well. I mean, as long as we're not losing, that's the important thing. As long as we're still putting points on the board, it puts more pressure on the teams behind us. And so, I think it's much harder when you're down in the bottom four, to try and get those points and to sort of call yourself out. I think we have a bit of a cushion at the moment, and so long as we can keep that cushion, I have a bit of confidence for us. So, but I don't think that it's going to be very easy, despite the fact there's some different form over the last three games for both of these two sides. They've had contrary results, but yeah, they're mid-table, and in many respects, we're a kind of a mid-table side as well. We've talked about this in previous weeks. Why is it that if for just a few chances here or there, we would have actually come out with a few wins when instead of draws, and a few draws instead of losses. It's just a shame that as a result we'd find ourselves down at number 19th position, because in many respects I think this season we've been a reasonable mid-table side. We could have pushed on, but it never happened. And I think with these two teams as well, I think they're going to be evenly matched matches, I think.
Yeah, I mean we've kind of generally been in most games this season, haven't we? But the lack of cutting edge has cost us, and it's also, to be honest, probably cost Southend as well. You remember from the home match against them, as you were saying, they keep the ball really well. Yeah, they must have had about 70% possession against us. It was just they were just moving into space. It was beautiful to watch. If you were kind of a neutral looking at the football style, but my God, they couldn't fashion anything in the final third at all. Which is obviously, we see that against teams that sit back against us. Maidenhead will do it, your brain trees, and as we keep alluding to, we can't beat teams around us, and that's why we're only 2 points off. So I wouldn't call that a cushion, Guy. That's the only thing I'll say, because one game and we are in the relegation zone. 2 games we could be third bottom.
We do have games in hand though.
Oh, the old games in hand cushion. Okay, I'll broadly accept a games in hand cushion. But it is against Fylde, which means that the pools say draw. Great. Well, that was a whistle-stop tour through all the main talking points of Aldershot this week, which are many. Probably could have talked for about 3 hours on the first topic alone. But yes, thank you, Guy, and thank you, Julian.
Pleasure.
Thank you. Yeah,
Enjoyed it. It's quite nice having a chat about all things other than games, isn't it? We've had a good old chat tonight about a few things, and thank you to Sean was to the emailing.
Yeah, definitely. Keep them coming.
Absolutely, yeah. Anything you want us to tackle. Any fun questions as well, because we could end up with a very depressing set of episodes soon if we keep edging towards the relegation zone. Grand. Well, thank you for listening, and up the shots.